thank you so much. Love this film, love the adults. It's a real pleasure to having you here, and just picking your brain a bit. Let me make one more adjustment here. Let's see. I'm looking for how to make this full screen. You want to help me out here? But do you see how to make this full screen?
On the top right, it's on the white. Yeah.
That little square?
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, and I could get rid of the participants. There we go. All right. Hi, Dustin. Welcome to Utah Valley University. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to ask some questions, and then the groups here are going to come up and they're going to introduce themselves and ask questions. I appreciate you taking the time and staying up late from the East Coast.
I'm in California, so.
Oh, cool. You're up early. All right, good. That's still pretty loud. Let me lower that a little bit here. Okay, cool. Well, my first question goes back to, I think, when we first met. We met at a panel. You and I were both on a panel at Sundance that I think the Film Commission put on. And I don't really remember the context of that, but I totally remember something you said. It really stood out for me. Somebody had asked about audience, and everyone kind of gave their little spiel about audience. And then you said something. You said, this was probably right around the time that you had made Bad Fever, maybe a few other things. I don't remember the timing of it. But you said right now, your audience is really just other filmmakers. And you want to make sure you're making movies that people like you and other filmmakers really dig. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting answer. Could you maybe explain that answer a little bit and some of those thinking, and then maybe see if that's changed over the years, because that was over 10 years ago, I'm sure. So.
Oh, wow. I don't, yeah, I don't, yeah, other filmmakers have been my in some ways, main inspiration, and friends who are filmmakers have been definitely big inspirations for me. And also the people who I think I've learned most from and grown from, and just talking about movies or seeing movies together. I definitely think I do think of a few people, when I'm making something, if they're going to like it, but I don't really think, I don't think about it too much, because then I'm sort of not working the way I should be working. So, yeah, I don't know. Right. Now I'm on the, now I really am just trying to please myself the most, and trying to just think about what I want and what would make me happy, and what I want to see. So I'm trying to really focus on that the most at this moment. But of course, I want my peers to really like my films and appreciate them. And I'm always wondering what they're going to think, for sure.
It was a really interesting answer. It was an answer that had, it wasn't an answer that was sort of targeted at this woman's sort of question. I don't know why I said a woman. I guess I remember a woman asked it, but I remember just being struck by it. And, clearly, because that's like the only thing I remember from that panel was that answer.
I remember something happening in the panel that was really like, I remember saying something that made I thought everybody got very uncomfortable when I said something. I don't know if it was that, but I think I was arguing something. I don't remember. I argued something, and I felt bad that I was arguing, but I also felt like, anyway, I wish I remember what I was arguing about, but.
A point needed to be made. I'm sure you were absolutely right.
But I think I was on that panel because I don't know if everybody knows this, but I'm from Utah, and that's how I ended up on that. I think that's how I ended up on there, because someone from the Utah Film Commission, I think I knew at that point. Yeah. And I shot Bad Fever in Salt Lake City, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was either maybe a little bit after that, or that's what I would suspect. But anyway, I remember so little about that, but once we kind of reconnected for this, it kind of came back to me. So going to that, sort of from that, you use a lot of non-actors. I shouldn't say a lot, but you often use non-actors and other filmmakers in your films. And so, can you talk a little bit about that? But just kind of the pleasures and challenges of working with non-actors, and then I kind of think working with filmmakers is different than working with non-actors, but sort of kind of the interesting and kind of the pleasures of working and challenges of working with other filmmakers.
Working with other filmmakers as actors?
Yeah.
Well, this movie, Person to Person, is so obviously full of both kinds of professional actors and non-actors, and and Benny, who was my roommate, is very much a non-actor, but and then like his whole sort of side story and everything, or whatever you want to call it, is full of non-actors. I love both so much, but working with both kinds of actors, and it's very, very different. It's a different process and you sort of know, like, the capabilities of certain kinds of and almost what you need to tell, like, generally speaking, professional actors sometimes this doesn't happen often, for me. I try not to talk too much about backstory, but they'll want backstory or motivation or anything like that. And then with non-actors, actually, it is motivation, but it's not like they're asking for motivation or anything like that. But you're trying to give them the right kind of scenario so they can sort of believe the scenes and things like that as much as they can. Just to try to get them to believe and to be inside of it. But like, I don't know, the first movie, that movie I just mentioned, Bad Fever. Yeah, Kentucker Audley is the main person in that. He's a filmmaker. And I know Benny Safdie's in this movie. I'm trying to think of who else. I have a short film with Josh Safdie also, and who else? Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. There's sort of I don't think of when I work with those people who are filmmakers, I don't think of them as, I respect their, I like these people because I respect their work, but I'm hiring them because I think they're right for the role and that they're going to be good in the film and they're the right actor for the movie. Yeah, so I don't think about them separately in any kind of way.
So my final question, and I hog questions at the beginning, then I'll let them come up. Because I could talk to you for an hour. I don't know if you could talk to me for an hour, but I could talk to you. So my final question is about music, because this especially, but also Adults, has very sophisticated music, wonderful music. And then Bad Fever, I don't think is in it. So can you talk about that? Talk about those different choices and.
Well, number one is budget. I guess the things that go in tangent are budget and then my own sort of almost fear, or also sometimes desire to have a composer or not have a composer. I've never really understood how to I've always been sort of worried about communicating my feelings to a composer. I'm always worried that the music's not going to be good. So I sort of avoided it. But also that has something to do with budget too. Like, Bad Fever, we shot for, like $17,000. I'm sure at that time period, I could have got a composer to just do it for free. But everybody worked on that movie for free. And I think that was right for that movie. This movie has a little bit of score, but it has obviously a lot of like source music, and which was really hard it took a long time. It was very painstakingly to try to figure out how all this music in this movie with the budget we had. It was really, really difficult. And in fact, couldn't happen now because budget, like music rights have gone up like 3 times since I made Person to Person because of Spotify and everything. So, because artists need more money, they're charging more for music rights. So they're like all the music I got for Person to Person, I don't know what I would have done differently, but I wouldn't have been able to afford that budget. And then my new movie, The Adults, it's the first time I've fully worked with a composer, and that has been just like, I'm just lucky because I had the right person, and like I could say stupid things and he would not treat it like it was stupid, and we would have a really, it was really good communication and a really good relationship. I think part of it was that he was willing to be wrong and I was willing to be wrong. So we would be able to figure things out together. And then I just, spent a whole bunch of money on a couple songs because they're so expensive now, but.
Yeah, I love the Men in Hats song. I hadn't heard that in a long time. I was like, man, I haven't heard that song in a long time. And I walked out and went in the store and it was playing. I thought, wow. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to you. Come on down here, please. And let's be sure to say your name. kind of like, if you're in a concentration and a track, let them know what you're doing. And we're gonna now play open mic. So come on.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Shen. I'm a senior in the directing track. So I've seen a few of your films at this point because I'm in the CineSkype class, actually. Oh, thanks. And so one of the things I've noticed is that in all the films I've seen of yours, it's not the traditional story structure that we've learned about in class. And so I was wondering, did you go into these with that structure in mind and then change it as you were creating the film, or did you go into it without thinking about the structure at all?
Which movie? Okay, what story structure? Yeah,
Person to person.
yeah. I mean, person to person actually has a story structure that's sort of caked. I mean, the movie's unusual because I purposely, and I flirted with it, but it's an unusual movie because in a normal ensemble movie, there would be more connections between people. But in terms of story structure, I actually did structure it. I mean, it's a little bit, I try to bury structure as much as I can, but I find myself always gravitating toward 3-act structures and and building scenes so that just the basic things of a scene needs to begin somewhere and end somewhere else and switching those kinds of things around. But yeah, so person to person is very tricky because of you have 5 arcs or something, but those arcs are actually quite, I think, pretty traditional and sort of straightforward story structure. I don't know. I feel like I will say, yeah, I guess I will say this, I personally, everybody's totally different, but I personally I love structure and I like thinking about it, but it continually gets in my way when I'm trying to develop characters and I feel like I'm just shoving them into something that they don't want to fit into. But I find personally that story structure just sort of happens. It's sort of that's why it's amazing. That's why it's what's taught or talked about, is because it actually is organic and natural. And I find that it just naturally sort of comes out and happens. I end up thinking about 3-act structures and things like that. I try to be very careful about not to think about them too much because I think they get in my way. But I also try to I try to bury them because I also feel like movies now, if they sort of show their structure, the feeling of the first act ending and things like that is sort of wearisome unless you're just sort of mastered it in some other kind of way. But I like to try to not think too much about it. I let the story just happen, and I feel like when I do that, the story just sort of naturally ends up being like a 3-act structure just by nature.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for your answer.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Meet you.
Hi. Okay, I was glad that I was tall enough to be in the camera. So comforting. My name is Ashley. I'm a senior in the writing track. And so my question kind of stems on that side of things, on your writing process. I was interested to learn that for the adults, it started in part because you wanted to work with Michael Cera. And as a general rule of thumb, I know as a writer, you're not generally supposed to write for someone specific. So I just wanted to know, how does that work for you in your process? Does that help you?
It actually does help me. I mean, I don't, yeah, for sure. I made it the short person to person and this feature. I mean, both of them came out of thinking about my friend Benny and wanting to make movies with Benny. So I wrote, the short for Benny and I wrote the feature for Benny. And I wrote with them, thinking of them in mind. And then, yeah, my new film, The Adults, I wrote completely thinking of Michael. It's not like he could have said no, but I wrote it thinking of him, thinking he would be right for the role. And so I don't know. For me personally, I actually would love to be able to just know which actors are going to be in the movie and write for them. That would be my preference, but that's not I don't think it's realistic, and at least in where I'm at right now. I'm writing something right now that I'm just dreaming of what the actors, you know, I have ideas of what the actors would be, but like, I don't know if it will really happen, but I'm thinking about them a little bit, but I'm also trying not to I'm trying not to pigeonhole the characters either into these specific people. They're just sort of, it doesn't have to be those people in the end. And I'm totally fine if that's not going to happen, but yeah, but those three movies would have not happened. Those three movies wouldn't be those movies if I hadn't been inspired by the people that I knew already.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jack. This is my second year in the program. I haven't selected an emphasis yet. Well, I guess first I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. And my question was, well, I think the casting in this movie is just like so perfect, and I was just curious, like, what the casting process was like and how you went about selecting the actors that you worked with.
Well, yeah, I mean, this movie, yeah, I mean, as you can see, this movie's just it's just completely full of so many people, so many characters, and it's just chock full. There's almost like a new person showing up all the time. I mean, it started with Benny and wanting to make this movie of Benny. So Benny was a given and already in the movie. And then, some things just sort of, the initial things that sort of happened was I had a friend who knew Abby Jacobson, and I really liked Broad City. And so I was lucky enough to have a friend, I was lucky enough to go to a friend, and then Abby read the script and I met Abby, and so she was in the movie. And then Tavi Gebbinson was really hard, actually the hardest person to get, because her agency didn't seem to want to make the movie. It was just too small a movie or something. They wouldn't let her read the script, and it took a long time and a lot of weird things to try to get her to even read the script. But once she read the script and she wanted to do the movie, it was just her team, which is this happens all the time. It's terrible. It's terrible. Basically Abby, Tavi, and Benny were the first three people in the movie. And then at that point, we hired a casting agent who's a giant casting agent. This woman's name is on so many movies that I love, and I imagine movies that you love. I mean, she's one of the most, her name's in the movie. I wasn't even going to say her name, but anyway, she's a huge casting director, but she like, I don't know what happened, but like, I feel like she just didn't understand what I was doing, because it just didn't gel. It didn't work. She kept bringing in people that didn't make sense for the movie. So what ended up happening was Elaine Orr, who's in Bad Fever, who's also in this movie, who plays Benny's girlfriend. She's a very good casting person. She's actually, she's actually discovered some amazing people who we know. But she did a lot of the casting and helping me out. And then I casted a lot of the people. And then we just ended up like, because we already had a couple like Abby and Tavi, and it was sort of somehow got easier, and like it happened just fast, like Philip Baker Hall. I mean, it just all was like very fast. And then a lot of people were my friends. A lot of people in this movie are my friends. And so that's sort of how that all happened. But it was just a lot of like auditions and a lot of things just coming our way in so many different ways. And it's like this movie was not made for that much money, so everybody got paid exactly the same amount of money. So Michael Cera made as much money as Benny, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve. I am a senior in the editing track here at UVU. But I've also written and directed a couple of things while I've been here. So my question is kind of along those lines. I wanted to ask you what your editing process is, specifically to, correct me if I'm wrong, but person to person, you edited yourself and the adults, which by the way was great. I really enjoyed it. the adults, you had another person who was also editing. So my question was kind of what is your editing process when it's just you? And also with like specifically the adults, was it more of like a director editor relationship, or were you both editing, and kind of what is that process? Because I know that for me personally, when I write and direct something, it's hard for me to imagine having someone else edit that. So I wanted to ask kind of your thoughts on that and how you approach that.
Well, I've edited all my shorts, and my first movie called Bad Fever, I tried to edit it, but I didn't even know what I was doing. I really couldn't edit very well. And I don't know if you know who this filmmaker David Lowery is, but David Lowery edited Bad Fever. And because he edited that movie, I really learned how to edit watching David, and also just the choices he made, which saved my movie and also made my movie so much better. He just is, so I just learned how to edit from watching David, which he had already done so much editing work that he's gotten so good at it. But I wouldn't even say it's 100 times more difficult. It's like 1,000 times more difficult or more to edit a feature than a short film. All my short films I've edited in like generally 3 days or something, but these features have driven me totally crazy, and I have tried to not be the editor on these features, but the problem becomes when you're making a certain level of movie and budget that you simply can't afford an editor for the amount of time that it seems to take for me to edit these movies. These edits have been way too long. I don't know how to get them to be shorter. And I just really cannot wait to find the right editor who's like the person who I can just edit with for the rest of my life or something, you know? But it's been really budget that I've had to been sort of, because, you know, I've edited these movies for like 7-8 months or something or longer. And neither of these movies could afford a regular editor for that long. But I tend to do that with the adults, yeah. But like the other editor just did the assembly. They worked on the assembly for about 4 weeks, and then I came in and we worked together for 2 weeks, and then he left, and I was alone. And then he came back for 1 more week, but I was pretty much alone for months. So it still ended up feeling like I edited the movie by myself, and it is what it is. I just don't, yeah, I don't consider myself to be a great editor. I feel like I've gotten very, very good, but I just do not want to do it again with my features. I really hope it doesn't ever happen again. But I don't know. Because I think it's just, I love, it's just too lonely. Like writing is already lonely enough, and I love being around people. So I'd rather just writing be the lonely process and have editing be not so lonely. It just got, yeah, with the adults, it got so lonely, and was really difficult. But yeah. So it's just been because of money, basically, but also just not finding the right person too. It's just really hard to find the right editor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm a sophomore in the editing track mainly, but I also want to direct my own stuff. And the last I kind of stole most of my questions, so I'm kind of gonna have to ask you to expand on it a bit. One of the main things I'm more curious about is when you have had to or chosen to edit your own stuff. I'm kind of curious as to what your process is like when you do that, and then also how involved other people are in the cutting process. So when you have assistant editors, or if you have like producers or other friends or people you trust creatively, how involved are they when it comes to how the cut turns out?
The movies have been very different, but with person to person, well, the general way I work is that it's really, really hard to forget what the production was like, which you sort of need to do. You need to like try to come to the footage sort of fresh. So if you're just the editor, it's much easier, or just like fresh. I didn't know they had a bad day that day. So what I'm seeing has nothing, you're looking at footage and you're like, oh, I didn't know they were really struggling with the light that day or something like that. So I don't even know that's happening. But like, if you're the filmmaker, you have, the footage has other stories in it, and you sort of have to sort of try to figure out how to come to it fresh. But the way I generally work is that I watch everything, and I basically, I know there's probably a better way to do it, probably on Premiere or whatever, where you probably put markers or something. But in fact, I've learned that now from the editor I worked with on the adults, how he had markers everywhere, which I wasn't doing. I've been writing everything down, like, okay, I write everything down, here we are on take 1A, 1. And I sort of say, I sort of am just noting the things I like, oh, right then on that line, I love that. I got to remember, and then I'll start piecing things together. I'll just start putting everything that I love, and hopefully, and just trying to see if like, does the line or the two lines that I love of this actor mesh with the two lines of this actor that I love? Do these things actually go together? Because sometimes they don't actually, and sometimes it feels like the powerful feeling, the love feeling, should just be on the one actor and not the other actor or something. There just has to be a rhythm that you're sort of like looking for. That's sort of like the beginning process of like picking selects and trying to figure out which takes I like the most, and hoping like, oh, I hope I can keep that moment in the movie, kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's a long, it's a long process. Usually, the producers are watching the first cut, or like a trusted friend is watching the first cut, and then it starts expanding, another friend and another friend, and then like screenings, small screenings. The adults had a bigger screening during editing, and I think, and then with like person to person, I got so lonely, and I ended up having like a filmmaker come in, a friend. Well, he wasn't a friend at that point, but he became a friend. He came in for 5 days, and he just sat behind me, and we talked. I edited and we talked, and he helped. And then a couple weeks later, another filmmaker actually came in, but that system wasn't working. So I actually let him edit, and I sort of would walk away and let him just edit a little bit. And then with the adults, the adults was just a really hard edit, and in the end, I ended up going to another trusted filmmaker's house for the last 5 days of editing, because I just felt sort of lost and needed somebody to help, who I trust to just help me out, and he really helped me out a lot. So yeah, I mean, screenings and just trying to get, I think the general rule, which maybe people have talked about, but it actually is true, is that if people are saying the same thing over and over, like something is wrong, you have to sort of like listen to that, even though you feel like maybe it's not right. But if like too many audience members are saying something like, I don't understand this, or this makes me feel weird, and that, you need more than 50%. Well, probably like, it needs to be like, I don't know, 60 or 70% or something. And then you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's actually right. That's actually, I think, sort of true, and something to listen to.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Joel. In a lot of films that we watch nowadays, especially like big blockbuster films, the characters all kind of speak the same way. And they say different things and they express different ideas, of course, but they all kind of like sound like the same. Right? So I was really impressed by the diversity and contrast in the way that people talked in person to person. It felt really real and immersive. So my question is, what advice would you have for a writer who wants to replicate that ability to create a unique voice for each character?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've worked really, really hard on dialogue. I mean, like, I've worked on it so hard, and I've just tried to like, I've grinded it really. I mean, I've written so many scripts, I have zero clue how many scripts I've written. I couldn't even guess. There's no way I could guess. It's more, I don't know, it's more than 50, but I have no idea how many I've written. But it's just, and I think I've written way more bad scripts than good scripts, way more, just trash that I've just sort of, but I think working through all that has been just working the craft and trying to get to a place where I feel very strongly about my dialogue, and just try, because I love dialogue, and just yeah, but it's hard to write. It's really, really hard to try to figure out how to make something that will work dialogue wise. But part of it is that, I mean, with person to person, it is I lived in New York for a long time, and like, it's an appreciation of people and sort of knowing the place and understanding the people in that place. And it could be anywhere else. It could be Orem. It could be it could be another place where you just sort of have a handle on the people, and you have a handle on like the different kinds of people wherever you are. But I think it's like, even with person to person, really, I'm very, very, very conscious of like trying really hard to make, even if somebody has one line, to give it just a little bit of life. Like, this character has just, I don't think about it too much. I don't like think of, oh, here's this person at the bodega, their backstory. I don't think like that, but I try to give them just a little bit of some kind of like, they're living their life. They're actually existing in this day. So this is sort of what's happening. But with something like person to person, I also am very lucky, that just like that, I had all the right people, and like they were all saying, they bring their own thing, and I let them bring their own thing. But it is all scripted, and something like the bodega where Benny goes in and shows his shirt to the people at the bodega. We had a crazy day that day, and we had to shoot that scene suddenly out of nowhere, out of schedule. And those two people who were responding to Benny's shirt worked at that bodega, and we didn't know until right then that they were going to be in the movie. That was not supposed to happen. We were supposed to shoot that scene the next week, but we suddenly had to shoot it. So some of it's just like in the cards. It's just like not being afraid and just saying, okay, well, this is happening. And then just being very lucky that these two guys were just the two people working there, which is sort of perfect. And they just sort of filled in the character in a way that I couldn't necessarily as a writer, is filled it in. But it is an appreciation of people, I think, and thinking about that somebody's actually going to have to say the line, and like what that will mean for them, and all this stuff.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey there. So my name is Leo. I'm on the directing track, or I'm on the editing track. Apparently I'm directing as well. I really enjoyed the film. I think, the characters, they just felt so three-dimensional. And like, in working during my classes, like while doing like screenwriting, like my characters will feel so two-dimensional. And I really appreciate like that advice. I guess as an editor, what I wanted to ask was, you've edited this film, and other films you've had help from other editors. And I'm curious about what that difference is like when you have yourself as editing. And like, if money wasn't an issue, would you want the editor to be involved during production so that they can get a feel for what's happening? Or do you like it better if it's like they have no idea and they're going in without seeing the footage?
I mean, definitely for me, it would be incredible, and it would be ideal if the editor read the script and we discussed the movie before I shot the movie. That would be what I would want to happen 100%. And I would also want them to be on set, tinkering around with the footage while we're shooting. I mean, that would be huge. Definitely. I just am hoping that sort of person's going to come to my life. But yeah, I would prefer that for sure. I mean, it's not that I know what the edit's going to be like, but because I've edited so much, I feel like there's another old adage of like, you learn how to make a movie through editing. And I think that's true. It's like you really discover a lot when you're editing. And I think editing has made me a much better writer and a better director. And when I'm writing, I'm editing sort of, I mean, not really, but I'm sort of editing the movie in a certain way because it does become sort of economical in the shooting, is like, so that you don't have to, it's very, when you understand editing, production becomes easier because like, okay, I just need that one line because we never got it, or I just need them to do this line 4 times because we don't have a variety of it, or we just need to cover this little bit here. You just sort of understand, and you can be economical and strategic for the shooting of the day. That would be a dream if the editor, like, I already knew the editor and they read the script and we talked about the edit before I started shooting.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, it's good to know, just because as an editor and during these opportunities where I'm working on student stuff, I have a chance to be on production, to help out. And if I can put myself there more, I think the edit can come out better. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justin, and I'm a senior in the cinematography track. I just wanted to say I really love your style. I think the way your movies are presented visually is really beautiful. It's a very cozy filmic look, and I love how unique your characters are. And so I don't know, I think my love for this type of filmmaking, I think, has made me curious about what you consider to be an inspiration. If there's any filmmakers in particular or any type of art. I've seen in some articles we've read, they draw comparisons between you and John Cassavetes is one name that I see. So if you have any names or really anything, I'm all ears.
Okay, man, it changes all the time, and like there's no way to, it's really hard. I mean, I love John Cassavetes, and but I mean, my first real like cinema love was Ingmar Bergman. I watched Seventh Seal because I was working at a video store in Salt Lake City, called Movie Buffs, which I don't think it exists anymore, but I was working there, and we had the Seventh Seal, and I just saw the cover and I was like, whoa, death and playing chess and everything. So I watched that, and then I went sort of crazy, and I think we only had 2 Ingmar Bergman movies. So then I went to the Tower, which had the greatest, which still has an amazing collection, and then I just watched, then it was just Bergman, and then it was Godard, and then I was just watching all this stuff, but over the year, I think like this French filmmaker Eric Romer is like top, very close to the top of the list. I love him a lot. There's a Korean filmmaker named Hong Sang-soo who I really love, who's just making, Hong Sang-soo is just making like, Hong Sang-soo currently, he's like 60 years old. He's making like 3 movies a year, and he's making like, he's now he's doing everything. He's doing everything except for being the production manager. So he is shooting, he's doing the sound, the shooting, the music, the editing. Everything is, there's only 3 people who work on the movie other than the actors, and that's just a production manager and like a production assistant. He does everything else at this point, and he does like 3 movies a year. Anyway, his movies are like sometimes incredible, and sometimes they're just, because he does 3 a year, it's like a lot of. But I think he's incredible, and to open up the door of Hong Sang-soo, the best route is probably just to watch this movie called Yourself and Yours. It's really, really, really good. But I don't know. Currently, right now, I really am just like, I've always been a Mike Leigh fan, so I love Mike Leigh right now. So like Secrets and Lies, Another Year, Happy Go Lucky. And then I really think Kenneth Lonergan is just an incredible writer and director. So I like Margaret is one of my very favorite movies. You Can Count on Me and Manchester by the Sea, incredible. He's just an incredible writer. But then like I love, I love David Lynch. I love Stanley Kubrick. I love Claire Denis. I love Agnes Varda. I mean, like it's like it just depends on it depends on what's going on. But right now in my life, it's all Mike Leigh and Kenneth Lonergan. It's probably just because of what I'm writing. I'm just thinking about them a lot. But but anyway, my influences have changed over the years. They've been all over the place, but I have, those are only a few of my favorites. I have too many. I have way too many.
I feel that. Well, I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. I'll check those recommendations out. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Micah. I'm a cinematography student here at UVU. And I watched all the material. I watched all the short films. I thought those were interesting. The one called Editing. I thought that was, if you're okay with, why?
Oh, why?
Yeah, like, was it because you were in the process of editing it, or was it the idea to begin with?
Yeah, it was the idea to begin with. Yeah, I mean, it was the idea to begin with, but it was different when I wrote it. It wasn't the same. It was different. That it was always going to be about what editing is and what the power of editing is, and like what it means to take this piece and this piece together, and what changes. It was always that. But that it was really hard. And it wasn't those black spaces. And in fact, I find the black spaces to be annoying. And I feel like I wish there had been a different way to do it. But the second half actually does make the experiment that I was trying to do pull off for me, which is like the complete different feeling of like putting this person's performance with this person's performance, and why this performance needs this performance, and what the two of those things together actually create and make you sort of feel and happen. The edit is not how I wrote it, but it's very, very close. It was just a really hard edit to pull off. But the original idea was that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was so confused for the first half, and then like you said, it really made sense.
I know the first half is confusing, I know, and I wish it wasn't confusing. It wasn't supposed to be when I wrote it, but I couldn't figure out how to edit the way I wrote it, and I had to change it. And it sucked. And I wish the first half was not so confusing, but it is what it is.
If you're okay, I have one more question for you. This one's probably a bigger one. How much do you influence the cinematography of the story? How much does the director go in there and say, I want this shot before the story's before you go on set,
I haven't been doing a lot. I mean, I have. I mean, this movie, person to person, oh man, really complicated. I had a whole shot list and a whole plan, but it actually had to fall apart because of a disaster that happened. It's just not my, yeah, basically. Anyway, I don't know. I had to fire a cinematographer, and we had to get a new cinematographer. And because of that, I just had to let go and just choose shots as we went. But that's not bad. That's not a bad thing to do. I mean, I think the most important thing to me, my process is like I plan a lot and I have an idea of a plan, but usually it's way better if I have a plan because I need it. And then I start opening up to the location and the actors. So I find more and more now that for me, what I think I need to do is think about what I might want, plan it all out, but because I love actors so much, and I think my movies are really centered around performance and actors, I'm going to let them, the closer I get to working really hard on scenes, and the team of the actors and myself really cracking scenes and understanding them. Once we get all that and the blocking everything, then I sort of understand shots a lot more. So I still will probably always have a plan of a shot list and everything, but I find that because my movies are just sort of run off performance, that I think from now on, and the way the adults worked especially was we'll block, I have to see the actors working in this space and let them work in the space, let them be open, let them do their thing and see what's happening and try to figure it out, adjust, direct, figure out where they need to be, and then make up the shots there on set. But yeah, good DP though, that relationship, generally speaking, is one of us will have a better idea, basically, of what the shot should be, and then would go with a better idea.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is John. I'm in the producing track right now. And one thing that I've kind of gotten from everything you've done, you do a lot of, I mean, you said it just earlier, you do a lot of performative acting, right? I'm kind of curious what the process is going from the script to how the actor performs to, you know, the edit. How does that end up changing? What kind of changes have been made? Because you get a lot of you know, relationships being broken, relationships being made, a lot of things that feel very candid. And I'm curious if they're written candid or if they're edited to be that candid or something like that.
I mean, I think I'm like, you know, I think I am sort of looking for people to be natural and sort of organic. But even beyond that, there is another part that I sort of am like, I think I'm like just wanting to, I think it's honesty, actually. I'm looking for them, they don't have to necessarily be themselves, but I'm looking for some kind of honesty or some kind of essence of honesty. And I think I'm just like looking for that. And also just like making sure that, you know, the scene is working and all that stuff for sure. But that's sort of what the search is for in the directing and everything, and how I'm directing and where I'm trying to get everything to go to. But you know, if you know, again, it's like budgetary and like, you know, it would be, in an ideal world, it would be much better if I could have a lot more rehearsals, and rehearsals are really hard to make happen. You're working with professional actors and like trying to budget it and everything. It's really, really hard. But with Person to Person, it was just a very, I don't even, you know, that movie is just sort of, I mean, it's just amazing that it got made for the money it got made for. And like, we didn't have, I only rehearsed with Benny and I only rehearsed with the teenager Tavi and her group of people. Everybody else we didn't rehearse. We talked a little bit. But most of those people, you know, I never had met before. I had really only met Michael Cera once before for coffee. And then like Philip Baker Hall, Michaela Watkins, all these people, I met them for the first time on set. So it's more, luckily with that movie, I had Person to Person, the short film, and they could sort of, I think seeing the short film and then reading the feature, they could understand a vibe. So they were a little bit easier to just come in and sort of feed into the vibe. But with my new movie, The Adults, we had some rehearsal, which was very essential and actually became so important for everything, and was really made the movie sort of the emotional core of the movie really kick off and happen. But I don't know. I think the best thing is like if you can, you know, I've been very lucky just to work with good people with no egos, but also like I try to make sets very comfortable and safe and warm and friendly. It is a very friendly, warm environment where hopefully everybody feels safe. And like, I think that then trust can happen. And if we're having conversations about, you know, like that build trust, then actors are more comfortable getting to these kinds of like places where they're sort of what I'm talking about, of trying to get into this sort of honest place that I'm trying to get to. And then editing is another story of like crafting it, but yeah.
Thank you so much.
How are you holding up, Dustin? We got one more. Is that cool? All right. Do we have only one more? Does anyone else want to? Because apparently it's cool.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm in the directing track, and I'm curious about a little bit about getting glimpse behind the scenes of Person to Person. And I'm particularly interested in what challenges you faced on set and what lessons you learned from filming that project.
Well, yeah, I mean in a way this movie, I don't even know if this movie would be made now, even though, I mean, it wasn't made that long ago, but it was sort of an impossible movie to make because of how many people there are and how many locations there are. And we shot in 19 days, and originally we were gonna shoot in summer, but we shot in November. So we only had like however many days of sunlight you have. And there's so much You know, we're not a movie that can just light up the street. So, and yeah, so much of this movie takes place outside. So it was just it was bonkers. It wasn't chaotic because we had done the right work in pre-production, and I had the right core production team, which are just incredible. We had done the right work so that everything didn't get out of hand. And it wasn't insane, but it was difficult and really, really hard and stressful. And simply, I did not have the time to direct the way I would like to direct. We didn't have time to figure out scenes a lot of the time. It was more of just like run and gun, shoot the thing, go. Sometimes I was like yelling direction, you know, which is not something, you know, just like do it. Wait, we're running out of light, just do, you know, this kind of thing, which is exhilarating in some ways, but like it's also really, really hard, and you're not getting everything you want to get, and you don't get to talk to the actors as much as you want to talk to. You don't get to figure out the scenes more and like really work on them. So what I learned was like, I need that, so with the adults, like that was the mission. The mission was like, okay, now let's have we have more days. It's an easier movie. We're shooting up New York, in upstate New York. There's fewer characters. And so now we're gonna have a very calm set, a very just like relax, you know, just everything's just calm. And the whole goal is to make it so that I and the actors can concentrate and focus, and we have time to work on scenes. Sometimes that doesn't happen completely, but for the most part, that did happen. So what I learned from person to person was like, I'm not directing the way I want to direct if I'm not focused and concentrated on the scene. If I'm thinking about, you know, like we're running out of time, it's going to happen no matter what. But like really that part where you're frantic, the frantic part, I find I can't really. I'm not directing. I'm not with the actor. I'm sort of just rushing through things, and I'm making them rush through things, and things are just not going the way I really want them to go. So that's the main thing I learned, was like what I really want, which is like calm, focused, incredible. Yeah. That's what I learned the most.
Thank you.
Well, Dustin, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing these great films and making great films. Thank you for responding to this. Everyone, let's give him a hand. Yeah, we've had David Lowery in this forum before. He's done this.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for watching movies and asking questions. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. We'll see ya. All right.